Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku became an information broker? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. The building was dark and dingy when they entered, but the outside was too, so Centipeder was not entirely sure why they were surprised by the lackluster interior. The building itself had looked abandoned, squished between two equally neglected shopfronts. Although they almost thought this one was worse, unlike its neighbors, the front was bare, no sign, no address, not so much as a nameplate or open sign. They found themselves double-checking the addresses on the neighboring buildings so they were sure that it was actually the right place before they dared trying the door. They would hesitate to admit they double-checked 2 separate times, but once they would admit to, the door was completely unlocked, swinging open on a barely rusty hinge. Upon entering, they had still found themselves thinking the front would be just that, a front, cleverly concealing the owner from their no doubt numerous enemies or from shady characters hoping to use them and their powerful quirk for evil. After all, Sir Night-Eye had been thoroughly assured before accepting the address that the owner of the place did not deal with villains, nor did they participate in the thriving market for heroes' private information. It always had surprised them how often that happened. It seemed like every third month a fellow hero was moving in a hurry to escape paparazzi, but they digressed. They were stalling to delay their necessary task. They had had far too many doubts about this from the beginning. Mentally steeling himself, Centipeder approached the empty counter that greeted them, coated in dust. A single dull bell rested on it with a bright, but old, sign boldly proclaiming in pink marker, "Ring for assistance, please, thank you for your patience." It almost seemed to mock the rest of the room, with its neon green smiley face adorning the corner, the only bit of cheer in the entire desolate room, a paper sign. Ding ding. They rang the bell, prepared to wait only a minute before declaring it a lost cause. Almost instantly a head of green hair popped up from behind the desk after a small clamor. Was there a basement behind it? Sorry about this, Mr. Juzo Moshi. Or should it be Centipeder instead? I heard you had been given my address. I'm glad you decided to come. I know you had your doubts. They trailed off awkwardly, realizing they had begun to ramble, but I'm sure you won't regret it. What do you need to know? Centipeder stood there for not even a half second, but that seemed too long for the green-haired child, and they were a child, not even in their teens, judging them off their looks alone. Just what were they doing? Straightening their slightly oversized suit sleeves, and didn't that just make them look that much younger? The boy continued with their eyes growing focused, but distant. Well, let's see, I heard you were tracking down the new quirk drag ring that had popped up with Sir Night-Eye? Yes, not much of note has come to his attention beyond that, unless of course this is about the All Might situation. He pauses, giving him an appraising look, but no, he would have come himself. Not that it's dash. A pause as their eyes returned somewhat to the present time and place instead of whatever they had been seeing before. Had that been Pantomath? He had heard a lot about that quirk, a mysterious info quirk, named for the search to know all. I don't mean any offense, of course, Mr. Centipeder, I just meant that particular case would be a more personal matter. Are you here about the drag ring then? This time they paused long enough for them to gather themselves and speak. I believe you are correct. The last few months Sir Night-Eye has been tracking an underground agency selling quirk-enhancing drags, but whenever it seems we find a lead, it slips away. But I'm afraid you have me at a disadvantage. What should I call you? Oh, my bad, I completely forgot. We haven't met yet, have we? They came around the desk, a file under one arm, and Centipeder got their first real look at them. The child was short with some baby fat still clinging to his cheeks, preteens maybe, and wore their suit and vest with confidence despite it seeming to swamp them, not to say it didn't fit, yet at the same time it made them seem impossibly young, as if they were trying to play an adult's game. Their hands were covered by gloves. All the same, they were plain, with a mess of dark green hair and impossibly wide matching green eyes that seemed to try and observe everything all at once, yet there was a tiredness to it all, despite their bright smile and cheer. I'm Deku, Intelligence Officer Extraordinaire. It's an honor to meet you. They extended their hand to shake. Deku had a strong grip. So they weren't just a desk worker then. Now, I'm sorry I can't offer you any better, but the whole building is proofed against bugs and the office upstairs is a bit of a mess at the moment. Rough company, you know? What can you do? Anyway, if now is a good time for you, you can just take a seat at the couch and we can get to discussing business. Thank you, Deku. Deku beamed as Centipeder sat on the lone couch that was shoved in the corner before pulling a folding chair from against the wall and settled down as well. Now, let's discuss terms. What do you want to know and what are you willing to offer? Full refund, of course, if the information is incorrect before. It took all of 10 minutes for any doubts he'd had to be washed away. Deku's quirk really was amazing to have uncovered all that he had, and so 40 minutes after their original meeting, he paid for the first set of information, a thick file that, to his surprise, the boy already had gathered in anticipation for the meeting. And with that under one arm, 55 surprisingly painless minutes later, he set off again to report back to Sir Knight, both about the arrangement he'd made and the strange green-haired child that ran the forsaken-looking building. Maybe Sir Knight I would be able to actually get a read on him if he accompanied him? After that first meeting, Deku and Centipeder saw each other 2 more times, each time with Centipeder leaving with more information on Overhaul's organization, such as its members and their quirks, including the best ways to counter and weaknesses or requirements for their quirks to work, and also multiple confirmed locations of bases and the operations done there, both past and present. It went without saying that he was impressed. Just 4 days had passed since their first meeting and already the young intelligence officer had gathered more than Sir Nightai's whole agency had managed to collect in months. It was truly scary. But his speed wasn't the problem that had Centipeder showing up to their scheduled meeting a full hour early with both Sir Nightai and Bubble Girl. The thing that had caught their attention was far more damning than the suspicions that rose from his surplus of info. The true issue was what Sir Nightai had seen when he finally managed to get close enough to use his quirk on one of the higher-ups of the 8 precepts of death. The quirk hadn't even progressed to show the man's future for more than 3 or 4 hours before he had seen them. Not just in a crowd, that would almost be expected, but leaving the 8 precepts of death building, the moment Overhaul saw the member though, it ended. When this was added together with the sheer quantity of Deku's information that not even the best quirks would be able to gather, more than Sir Nightai's quirk could get, things were looking fairly suspicious. It definitely didn't help Deku's case that the hero who he had been gathering info for before had taken down the precepts competition. This seemed to only spell trap. If only they had noticed earlier. The entrance remained unchanged as they entered the building. That is, except for the barely noticeable drips that trailed a path through the empty room, the couch having been moved elsewhere sometime before they had arrived. Sir Nightai leant down slightly to swipe his finger across one of the spills. His fingers came away red. Blood. He sighed in distaste over Bubble Girl's quiet gasp. Centipeder had been so wrong about the information dealer. Maybe it was his innocent looks. It was so unlike him to misjudge someone's character so much. Then again, it was hard to get a read on Deku. There was just something off about him. Well, so much for an alliance with this Deku, and they were so sure about the kid. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were coming early. Deku's voice cut across the near-empty room, a careful neutral. He was standing on the stairs to the upper floors, a narrow corridor, making their numbers useless. Yes, I'm afraid we haven't met yet, and since we were in the neighborhood, we stopped in early. I'm Sir Nightai and this is my sidekick Bubble Girl. You have already met Centipeder, yes? He offered his hand to shake. Deku gave him a disbelieving look before taking a few steps down the stairs and moving behind the desk. I was under the impression your quirk was only good once every 24 hours. I suppose I should be honored you chose to use it on me then? Papers shifted around on his desk before he pulled out a sticky note. If all you wanted was the info promised, I'm afraid I will have to disappoint this time. They offered you a better deal, didn't they? Bubble Girl huffed, causing him to go red in the face. What? No, I would nev. No, Why would you think that? How else would you dash? Deku carelessly interrupted Bubble Girl, not even noticing they were doing it. Oh, unless it was. This is because I was at their base. Yes, I suppose you have an explanation for that then. Considering you suddenly ending the deal, it doesn't seem suspicious, wouldn't you agree? Nightai cut in over Bubble Girl easily. Deku's head jerked up, realizing they could hear his musings. Well, you are right, it is related, but actually, this is their current main base's address. A casual gesture with the sticky note. And the reason I can't continue to help you is that while there I saw something that couldn't wait. So I had to intervene. I'm afraid I can't safely say any more than that, not that I don't trust you or anything like that, just plausible deniable, not that I did anything illegal, well, too illeg. It was self-defense, mostly, really. I had no choice, mostly I mean I could have, but well you see, With a deep breath they collected themselves. A habit Centipeder had gotten used to throughout their meetings. Deku, for someone protecting so much priceless information, had the bad habit of thinking out loud all the time and rambling whenever they got flustered. What I mean is that the precepts and overhaul should be out cold for the next few hours at this address. I see. What would you have done if Centipeder was late or didn't show? Refraining from judgment until they understood the whole view, it was one of the qualities Centipeder truly respected in the Sir Knight Eye, and partly why he joined the agency. I'm not sure. The Greenette paused to think, surprisingly not out loud for once, before slowly continuing, it should be safe for them to be left there for another 14 hours before they are found, and that would give me plenty of time to move them or at least introduce the gas to the base on a sustainable level. Or even to dispose of them, not that I would do that of course. I wouldn't. I'm not suggesting that I know several ways to keep them there for at least another 2 days, and after that an anonymous tip to the police would have them put away without complete knowledge of my interference. Very well, let's not test that. The address. Oh, right here it is. Do you know where of course you, sorry dash dot. A breath to compose themselves later they continued. It was an honor to work with you, Sir Knight Eye, Centipede. Bubble Girl. Why did you hesitate for me? Not cool. I only meant, it's just dash. Come on, Bubble Girl. The three turned to exit the building, Bubble Girl smothering her snickers as they went. I'm sure we will be working together again soon, Deku. Thank you for your help and sorry for the misunderstanding. They left to the sounds of the small Greenette's stuttering. Deku's smile disappeared quickly once they had left, staring down at the clean white gloves he held. It had been a while since he had been fully trusted by those he worked with. He slipped his phone out, dialing the newest number he had been given. Most of the people he knew were paranoid like that. Hey boss, all done over here, what's up next? Maybe they were right not to trust him. It wasn't long after that meeting he had his first meeting with a UA teacher, although in hindsight that wasn't all that surprising. This had been the biggest job he had been given, and from All Might's sidekick too. Since he had started his information agency. Not to mention the first time he had visibly interfered. He couldn't help it though, one glimpse of Aries' desperate tear-filled eyes and he found he had no choice but to step in. That was the reason he had decided to do this job, in the end, to help people. No matter how annoying the consequences were. He barely restrained the sigh from escaping as he looked across from him to the two UA teachers across from him. He had better things to be doing. This wasn't even for an assignment, because then he could at least be getting paid for this headache. At least he didn't think it was, and since neither were too active since having joined UA, dealing with a class full of teens was as good excuse as any, so the odds of it actually being a job were fairly low. And just like that, I knew what it was. Can you guess? Deku winced as Present Mike screamed across at him from the couch, arms waving wildly. You've told this story already, it's not even that good, Present. Now if you want to hear a decent story, Deku, Midnight cut in offering a predatory smile. I know a very good one, but you seem like you know quite a few yourself. Care to share one? How did you decide on Deku? It does mean, can't do anything, right? Deku practiced his patient smile again, the thrill of meeting the two heroes near its end after they had spent the past few hours bickering with each other without ever stopping. He had barely gotten a word in. That's right, it's a bit of a nickname, a bit of a reminder, but that's enough of this. I'm expecting someone to visit soon. What brings you here today? He has things to do, no matter what they seem to think. Well, to be honest, now wasn't that just a blatant lie? We heard so much about you from Sir Knight Eye that Nizu actually wanted to meet you himself to see about you partnering with UA, but you really are as young as he said you were. How old are you exactly? I'd put you a few years before freshman year, so last year of elementary? aiming younger than he looked just slightly to try and provoke him into giving an exact age. Not bad. Yeah. You're a little one, aren't you? How long have you been doing this for? Are you planning to try for UA? A bit amateur, looking at the lease would give them a good guess, or at least a starting point. And a hero card could get you access to almost anything in this day and age. Deku didn't even bother addressing his age, although they had reminded him this would be the year he would have tried out for UA. Now there was a thought he didn't know what to do with. I haven't quite decided what to do myself. I have done fairly good for myself as it is though. I guess? The open skepticism in Present Mike's voice said enough about what they thought about their house, and to be fair the building really didn't look like much. But that was exactly the point. Midnight responded with the far more tactful comment of, "This place? You could do so much better. Say, how about you drop by UA sometime this week? Nizu was busy today, but he really would like to meet you." An offer to visit UA, now that would be something his younger self would do almost anything for, and deep down he knew that had changed just about not at all. "I'll consider, but I wouldn't want to bother him." "Don't worry about it. Just ask for me or Midnight at the gate and we'll take you right to him." "Thank you, I really must get going now though." "We hear ya, see ya later kiddo." The two trooped out leaving him alone in the front room of the building. Creak. The hidden door to the back room creaked loudly, protesting as it always did when you didn't open it correctly, and announcing his new guest's presence. Deku glances over at Eri, who was watching him with wide red eyes in glitter-coated clothes. His home would probably be worse off. Deku? Who were they? The yellow one was really loud. "It's all right, Ri, they're gone now and he isn't he?" "Aha!" Eri grinned as she ran over and bounced on the couch the duo had vacated. Deku glanced at the bug detector he kept in his pocket as a precaution. The area was clean. They were heroes. The really noisy yellow one was Present Mike. "Have you heard of him?" He smiled at her as she paused to think, pouting cutely. "Nope. Is he really famous?" Deku got up, folding his chair and returning it to the wall before offering his hand to her. "Really, I guess I'll just have to introduce you to all the heroes myself then, okay?" "Okay." Eri tugged on his hand, happily swinging their arms as they headed to the hidden back room, the clean, brightly decorated living room and kitchen of his small home. The next time Present Mike visited it was to Eri sitting in an office chair happily swinging her feet and humming as she doodled. "Hello, little rocker. What are you getting up to?" "You're Present Mike," Eri declared victoriously while ignoring his question. "Guilty. Is Deku in today?" "Nope. He's busy." She returned to her crayon drawings. "Alrighty then. Know when he'll be back?" Soon I think," he said to warn whoever came in. "I'm armed and able to defend myself though. I even have an easy quirk cheat sheet." "Are you really afraid of bugs though?" Present Mike flinched, glancing around nervously as if there were bugs laying in wait for him to drop his guard. "Kiko uri act. Although that isn't exactly common knowledge. Did Deku tell you?" Eri nodded happily. "He said you might drop by." "Oh? Are you his little sister then?" "I wouldn't have guessed it." "His sister?" Eri paused. Present Mike moved closer in concern, his voice lowered, for him anyway. "Hey? Little listener?" Eri quickly recovered and returned to her art. "I guess. You had me there for a second. Where are your two parents then? Is it just the two of you kiddos fending for yourselves?" "Ri? Everything all right?" "Oh, hello Mr. Present Mike, I thought you might drop by. I'm sorry I couldn't visit last week, things were unexpectedly busy." Things really had been busy with the introduction of Eri to his schedule and being visited by 3 different heroes for some information. He had to update a few files too, and was still trying to figure out how to house Eri in his 1-bedroom, 1-living-room home. She had a bed in his room at the moment, even though she mostly ended up sleeping by him because of nightmares, as well as toys and her own chest of drawers. It made his room clash horribly with one side favoring green and red while the other was red, blue, and yellow, but in the end it made Eri happy, so he would be that last to say anything about it, even as the Christmas white colors spread through the living area and throughout the rest of the building too. Present Mike spun about to face the entrance where Deku now stood, bags of groceries in one hand and a few thick files in the other. It's a-okay, little man. I get it. All the same, if you ever do wish to visit, the invitation stands. Anytime you want to drop by, just ask for me at the gate. You can even bring your little sis with ya. The whole statement was accompanied by the now expected exaggerated hand movements. Thank you, I listened to your show last night. Deku grinned at Eri, giving her a pat on the head as he passed by, setting the bags on the floor and the files on the desk by an empty crayon box. Really? Well, what did you think? It was definitely an interesting stance for a media man to take about the media. That's 'cause you're looking at it the wrong way, little dude. I suppose you have a view from the other side as a pro-hero dash. Ininkter react. Deku startled from his mumbling at the loud interruption, before tilting his head in curiosity. Hey, be nice to him. Eri demands, looking up again to glare threateningly at Present Mike. Ah. I'll keep that in mind, little rocker. My bad. Pouting, she kept her eyes on them as she pulled out another crayon. What is it then, I mean? Deku leaned back to rest against the wall as he quietly rambled to himself. This time Present Mike let him, watching with mild interest as they thought through it a few seconds. Oh, it's because you're not a reporter or writer, you run an opinion-based talk show. You don't even seek people out to be guest stars for it. The ones you've had so far are mostly heroes you've met who you know well, or those who approached you, meaning dash. Ding ding ding. You got it, little listener. Well done. Deku beamed before his face reddened and he began stuttering out denials, thanks and some vague mix of words that didn't quite fit anywhere. Ahaha. Eri glared weakly at him. Hey. Be nice. Aha. Sorry, I'll behave, promise, little one. Well, I got to get going. Catch you later, little listeners. I got to save the hero course from expulsion. He really is too hard on those students. I look forward to your visit. Present Mike walked out with a wave over his shoulder. Well then, Izuka checked the room for bugs again. It was clear, but you could never be too careful. How would you feel about a trip to UA, Eri? Really? The small girl's eyes lit up at the prospect, her bright red eyes gleaming. Izuka smiled back just as happy, both at the opportunity and seeing her smile so happily. Really. Yay! Cheering, she shot up, abandoning her artwork to rush to the back room, already mumbling excitedly about the trip. It seemed like she was starting to pick up his bad habits already. Maybe getting out some would be good for her. Glancing down to pick up the grocery bags, he spotted the drawing she had made and his smile grew even more as he looked down at the crude stock figures drawn on it. A tall green one with wild hair, looking almost like rabbit ears with how some strands stood up, and slightly lighter green eyes standing with a grin beside the second figure with pale blue hair and red eyes. Grinning like an idiot, and ignoring the tears now running down his face, he picked it up to take back with him. This was a total going on the fridge picture. Hey Aizu. Aries mumbled, sounding impossibly vulnerable as she buried her face into his t-shirt. It was yet another bad night as she woke up from nightmares, going to Izuku for comfort. What's up, Eri? He continued, stroking her hair soothingly, humming an old lullaby. Are we family? Of course, if you want to be. Really? She was staring up at him now with those kicked puppy dog red eyes of her that just made him want to hide her away from all the evil and unfairness of the world. Really. Pinky promise, he offered his right pinky finger to her. You can't break one of those. Dealed up, brother Aizu. She linked their pinky fingers together with a triumphant smile. That means you won't ever leave me, right? Like in that movie? Of course. He hugged her tightly to him even as he continued stroking her hair. I'll never leave you behind, not even if you get really super annoying and try to take over the world. Okay. Izuku smiled as she dropped off to sleep in what seemed like seconds as he restarted the lullaby. It didn't matter what happened, he would never let anyone harm her, be it villains, heroes, or something else. He would crush them. Quirk or no quirk. After all, they were family now, and families stuck together. The days passed quickly, But this time Izuku kept an eye on the time, and after 3 days he decided it was as good a time as any and set about locking up the building, a surprisingly difficult task, or not surprising considering what it stored. He headed to the back room to tell Eri. When he found her, she was standing staring up at the fridge and her drawing. "Ri, how do you feel about visiting UA today?" She startled but grinned at him. "Really? Let's go, this will be so fun." She grabbed her red messenger bag from the hook, stuffing in a rainbow of art supplies and her new sketchbook to join the mess of stuff she kept there. "All set then?" She nodded. "Not forgetting anything at all then?" "No, don't think so." "Not even outside clothes?" She glances down at her light green pajamas before rushing off to grab her clothes, slamming the bathroom door behind her. "Meanie." Izuku couldn't help the smile on his face as he gathered his stuff as well, grabbing Eri's brightly colored, plastic watch and the hairbrush she had inevitably forgotten on the table again. "Ready!" The door banged again as Eri rushed out dressed for the day in leggings and a blue jumper with a light pink collared shirt underneath. "We can go now, right Aizu?" Izuku waved the brush back and forth in the air. "Not quite, you forgot to brush your hair again, didn't you? Can you do it?" Eri have her best puppy dog eyes. "It always hurts when I try." "Of course." Izuku pulled out a chair for her. "You just need more patience and practice so you don't tug the snags so hard." "Here." Eri victoriously handed him a hairband as he gently pulled the brush through her pale, powder blue hair. Pulling back the front strands, he tied them back so they formed a small ponytail amongst the rest that he kept down, keeping the hair from easily falling into her face. Carefully he set a sparkly flower pin beside her single horn and handed her the watch so she could put it on. "All set. Now can we go, right?" Deku chuckled. "Yes, we're all ready now." The journey to the train station wasn't too far and they made it to UA in time for school to get out, the students pouring through the gates in a rush to head home or to whatever activities they had planned. Carefully, Izuku selected a nearby cafe for them so that they could wait for the crowd to lessen, both enjoying their sweets as Eri asked about the pedestrians' lives. Deku made a point to deliberate long enough they wouldn't hear his guesses if they were nearby. That would make for an awkward conversation. "Thank you, have a nice day." Once the rush ended they paid and left, heading to the gates and pressing the visitor button, which garnered them more than a few looks. Deku readjusted his hood self-consciously to cover his face, and the half-mask on it, better. It was lucky that it was getting cold out or they would definitely look suspicious, as both of them wore jackets with the hoods pulled on. Beside him Eri chattered on excitedly between bites of her pastry. "Hello." On the other side of the gate stood an intimidating man dressed in all black beside the bandages wrapped loosely like a scarf around his neck. "Oh. Hello, I'm here to see your Eraserhead." Eri looked triumphant to recognize him. Giving the duo a second glance, and Eri a calculating look, he nodded. "Yep, not many people know that though. Because you're a spy, right? Underground hero." Deku corrected absently, having gathered his thoughts. "We're here to see Present Mike. He's expecting us, well, sort of." "Fine name?" "Oh, Deku, he'll know me as Deku." He was gifted with an utterly unimpressed look. "Deku?" "Why yes. Come on, I'll take you to him." Eraserhead turned, leaving them to follow him. "Don't fall behind." Undeterred, Eri grabbed Deku's hand and trotted after him to catch up, and pulling Deku with her, to skip beside the hero. "Your quirk is erasure, right? That's super cool. Do you know Mr. Mix? He's super tall and he's blonde and wears dark clothes like you do. You're nicer than him though." Eraserhead twitched. "You know him, right?" "I've only seen him twice in person, but we talked for a while once." When she got no response, she continued anyway. "Did you know he's afraid of bugs? Because he is." Deku tried to interrupt before she said too much. It would seem Eri took a liking to him. "Oh, that's right, you've known him since high school. He picked your name, right? Don't mommies normally pick people's names for them? But Brother Zoo picked mine." Deku internally winced. Eraserhead was curious now. "You know, Mr. Present Mike didn't really seem very cool. I thought heroes had to be, you know?" Eraserhead twitched again. Deku was becoming convinced he was trying to keep from laughing at her commentary. "That would, however, mean Now that would be an interesting turn of events. His information might need updating again. Oh. That's cold, little listener. Present Mick's voice interrupted his thoughts as a classroom door further down the hall opened up and he stepped out. Eraserhead turned to go. We're here, bye. Don't be that way, Shota. Stay a while. The little rocker's already taken a liking to you. I'm sure Deku won't mind. The two heroes exchanged significant looks that had Deku narrowing his eyes. Fine. I'm Aizawa Shota, and he's Yamada Hizashi, since I doubt that idiot bothered to introduce himself properly. A good plan, trying to force him into a complete introduction, get his name. Hey Dash. Not cool, man. A nice attempt. Deku, this is my little sister. Eri seemed to sparkle at that. Air, nice to meet you. They'd agreed that she would go by Air long before this meeting as it was similar enough to her original name so she didn't have to unlearn and then relearn her name, but no one would automatically draw conclusions like they would if she kept her old one and they knew anything about her life before. He'd already ensured there weren't many pictures, and none that were easy to find. Besides, it allowed him to keep his nickname for her. No family name? Might as well if they were being persistent. If anything, it may keep them from digging too far into his own past. Forgive me, I'm not used to casual introduction. Most of those I work with except just Deku. It's Kobayashi. Kobayashi Deku. A fairly common last name, but not too common to be overly suspicious. Okay then. Nizu isn't doing much at the moment if you'd like to visit him now. Very well, lead the way then. If you're here to visit Nizu, it's likely going to be long and a bit boring for your sister. I'm sure Midnight wouldn't mind watching her for you. A clever idea, seeing if Midnight could get some information from Air, while he wasn't there to moderate what she said. They'd already seen she was more likely to talk about their lives, and the heroes clearly already had their suspicions. No. But they underestimated how attached Air was to him. I'm staying with brother. Izuku beamed, scooping her up into his arms as her grip on his hand tightened. Alrighty then, off we go. Alright. Follow me, little listeners. All along the way, Present Mike kept up a running commentary with Eraserhead, occasionally interjecting grumpily to correct him, as they explained it, when he decided the story was getting too far from the truth. Air watched the two of them with wide eyes, only interrupting to ask questions a few times, which Present Mike gleefully answered. The group came to a stop in front of a door clearly marked, Principal Nizu. Alrighty. Let's see if he's in here. You don't knock, Dash? Was cut off as Present Mike yanked the door open, completely foregoing knocking, sticking his head in. Hello? You in there? He shut the door. Nope, let's keep going. You can't just open others' doors like that. Air huffed. It's rude. It's a-okay, little listener. The principal's cool with it, but definitely get permission first. The group moved on this time with Air bickering with Present Mike, but she seemed happier again as she squirmed to be put down and walk in the front with the blonde pro-hero. She's not actually your sister, is she? Deku glances over at Eraserhead. They had fallen back somewhat. It spoke wonders of how comfortable Air was around the two heroes that she had let go of his hand already. She is, but we're not blood-related if that's what you're asking, he grinned wryly. What gave it away? It couldn't possibly be the looks, could it? It had taken longer than he'd like to admit to adjust to sarcasm, but with the less-than-savory company he often found himself keeping he had learned quickly enough. How you both act mostly, actually, but I suppose I can understand the sentiment. Oh. Don't try that with me, it won't work, kid. You're right? Deku sighed in fake disappointment before brightening. I suppose I'll just have to ask Mr. Present Mike then, won't I? It doesn't matter how good you are if your company will talk without even a question. They both knew, Present Mike used his talkative front very effectively to hide secrets, always talking about something, sure, but of how much importance that talk held, that was debatable. Like you can talk. Deku gave his best mysterious smile. You'd be surprised. Brother, hurry up, we're going to see if Mr. Nizu is in the support area. Come on, we'll get to see it and everything. He was starting to get the suspicion they were just getting a tour, not actually looking for the principal. All right, I'm coming. With a final smile aimed at Eraserhead, Deku jogged over to catch up with the two up front, seamlessly joining their conversation about the UA quirk equipment and support course and their items. Something he knew far too much about already to not have insider knowledge. Eraserhead narrowed his eyes before closing them, deactivating his ability. They hadn't been using their quirk at that moment, so that was all prior knowledge. They hadn't even tried to activate theirs to gain more knowledge, or they would have noticed what he was doing. How interesting, it would definitely help narrow down their quirk's abilities. The group of four made their way through the halls to the support rooms. He wasn't there, and then the teacher lounge, empty, before finally stopping by the general ed class. They weren't there either. Never fear, little listeners. I'm sure Dash. You have no clue where they are, do you? Eraserhead interrupted. Thas TSSS, right? Eraserhead sighed. And you didn't think to call? Where is your sense of adventure? Besides, not everyone is so disillusioned with UA. I'm sure our guests enjoyed the tour. So that was the reason. Deku knew some of the places seemed weird, like the lunchroom, some quirk training rooms, and 3 different classrooms. It had proved his point though, being surprisingly subtle for someone who spent his time screaming his every thought to the world, but that's probably what made his subtleties so hard to catch. Akai. Well, it's pretty late now, and I'm sure Air wants to be getting home for dinner soon. I'm sure I can meet Nizu some other time. All right, Righty. Catch you next time, kiddos. I'll see you to the gate, Eraserhead sighed. Air smiled through a yawn. Bye-bye, see you next time. We'll look forward for your next visit. Or maybe we'll visit you guys first. Who knows? Deku patted Air's head again as he picked her up. Thank you for the tour, Mr. Present Mike, Mr. Eraserhead. No need to be so formal, but sure thing. With a final nod to present Mike, Deku followed Eraserhead towards the gate. The walk to the gate took no time at all, and he had to wonder if Present Mike had planned that too. He really was too clever when he tried to be, and after nodding goodbye to Eraserhead, the duo began making their way to the train station to head home. The sun already having mostly set, the two were left in the odd mix of sunlight and the artificial light of the streetlights shining down on the walkway. After the brief train ride, the two began the final leg of their journey, Deku absently muttering about the pros and cons of picking up takeout for dinner, and Eri smiling sleepily on his shoulder, clutching her bag that now hung across his chest after she insisted he hold it so she could try the obstacle course Cementos had created for her when they stopped by one of the training rooms. It was good she had had so much fun today. She had missed out on so much of life from her time with the precepts, and as much as he could try, being an information broker did not allow for much free time or normality. But he could manage it, if only to see her smile at him one more time. He had become what he was now to help people, but now he found himself willing to face the world again with nothing at his back and no hope for the future, alone if need be, as long as it would keep Air happy. Air. His little sister. His family. It had been a while since he could say those words to anyone, since someone had given him their full support. Since someone had believed in him. Because as much as she had tried to be there for him, she couldn't, not after that day, when he had had his dreams crushed and all he needed was someone to have some faith in him. Anyone. And instead of reassuring him, telling him he could do it, she had apologized and broke down on him. As if she was the one whose dreams had been dashed before their very eyes. But they were a distant memory now, and he had Eri by his side. So he would do what he could to protect Eri and make her smile. She believed in him, so he would never let her down. His eyes watered, but he didn't cry, the smile fixed on his face and thoughts of takeout long gone as he glanced down at Air. He had a family again, and things were looking up. For both of them. Heavy footsteps thudded out in front of him as a figure looked out from the shadows of the walkway. The rat finally decided to exit its little hole then. The rough masculine voice sneered, causing Deku's head to JRK up in shock. Oh, hello, Todoroki. Oh, hello, Todoroki. Deku couldn't help the nervous glance he sent Eri, who had unconsciously tensed at the newcomer's threatening tone. What brings you here? I thought I made it clear I had no interest in your proposal. And I think now that you're trapped out in the open you should reconsider, that is, before I make you. I must say, Todoroki, He made a point to use his family name instead of his hero name, a not exactly secret rebellion he made to spite the other when there was not much he could actually do against the man. Being the number 2 hero did have its advantages, but in the week he had known the hero he had already begun making plans. There was not much he could actually do now. Without too incriminating proof, because there was proof, it was just a question of how easily he could brush off the allegations. But the internet was a wonderful invention, and one he, more than most, knew how to use. It would just take a bit of time. But he had become who he was to help others. That definitely is a tempting offer, but threats don't work well with me. I mean, if I take threats from heroes, what will keep villains from copying? Heroes are the ones with morals. Well, I mean, they're the ones who are supposed to have morals. You. He absently trailer off, are not doing too great on that front. Mentally, Deku went through his instant blackmail checklist. The 4 voice recorders on his person and 3 with air, and the 3 cameras he had hidden on his own person as well. Those 3 recorded video but also took timed photographs to be sent, encrypted, to his computer and phone in case they were damaged. You better watch what you say, rat. Air, well yes, while we're on that topic, I feel obligated to say this conversation is being recorded and who knows what can happen with recordings, they could end up anywhere. He paused to watch the other's flame-covered face darken. Now I really must ask you leave me and my younger sister alone. I fear she's been kept up too long and she's had a long day. My answer won't change. I don't approve of your goals and strongly disagree with some of your actions as a person, so I will not work with you. You think you can just threaten me and walk away with it? I threaten no one, it's only polite to warn people when they're being recorded, that is all. I only intended to be mannerly. But with your attitude it's not completely a surprise you missed it. You are the one who threatened me with the whole or I'll make you business. That is, I am an innocent civilian simply returning home with their sister. What threats exactly can I make? Endeavor growled, drawing themselves up. How adorable. Those extra few inches of height did nothing to make you look more intimidating when you already doubled someone's height. Innocent? That's rich, I know what you are. I have broken no laws, not so much as a traffic ticket on my record. I am an innocent private citizen, nothing more. Oh, and we're just ignoring your little side job? I am very open in my occupation, Mr. Todoroki. I offer support and advisement for heroes. An admirable job by anyone's opinion. Just because I refuse you service because I disapprove of you both as a person and a hero, does not make my job a secret or illegal. Endeavor flushed. What exactly is that supposed to mean? You're a horrible hero, offering no support or even protection to those you are supposed to save, too focused on reducing to ash anything you perceive as getting in your way to the number 1 spot. It's shame you don't recognize it's partially your attitude. But you make for a worse husband and father, driving your wife to insanity and viewing your children only as tools to build your legacy at the top. This is all I have seen from you. Can you blame me for not wanting anything to do with you? Endeavor growled, advancing and swinging at him, flames leaping from his hand as Deku dodged the fist to spread out, fanning around the surrounding area. Deku twisted to keep Eri from the flames, sliding behind Endeavor and backing a few paces when a kick to the back of the knees only elicited more flames. That attack was completely unprovoked. What is wrong with you? Zoo! Air muttered, stirring in his arms from the sudden movement, heat, and noise. It startled both as their attention shifted. Izuku's eyes widened in time to Endeavor's growing smile, a sad, cruel thing. He raised his hand, flames liking at the arm as Deku jumped back a few more paces. No, please not, Ri. Please. Several things happened at once in a single breath of a moment. Endeavor sent out a new wave of flames aimed at both the area around Izuku and Air's sleeping form. Izuku flicked out a baton even as he turned to shield Air with his already burned back. The side opposite Eri was already far worse off though. The baton made contact with its target with a loud clang. As a "no" echoed through the air, and then the flow of flames cut off as suddenly as they started with it. In the next moment, Endeavor was turning with a roar of frustration towards the newcomer to see Racerhead, eyes wide and staring straight at him, capture cloth at the ready, while a wave of water shot from the fire hydrant in a concentrated stream, the cap laying useless, knocked off by Deku's baton. Eri, woken in the commotion, gasped softly as Izuku pushed her behind the hydrant as he curled into himself, a fire rushing through his nervous system separate from the flames that still liked his body. In the haze of sleep and confusion from the chaos that now surrounded her, a far cry from the calm calculation that followed Aizu's usual actions, Eri, without realizing it, activated her quirk on the cement beneath them, liquefying before it was reduced to an assortment of fine powders, raising cries of shock from the two combatants and a muffled scream as the smooth cement gave under Izuku's curled-up form, entering some wounds and agitating the mess even further, never mind the medical issues that the chemicals and bacteria could cause later on, before a powdery dust joined it, further contaminating his wounds. Eri, it's okay, breathe. A far calmer version of Deku than the one on the other side of the hydrant sounded from under her jacket. With fumbling fingers she tugged out the sealed pendant the voice had come from, a gift from Deku set to activate whenever her heart rate got too high and her quirk activated. Just focus on my voice, alright? Breathe in and out. Count with me, okay? 1 6 17 3 out 2 9 4 12 in 131 2 out 7 5 0 18 inches. Everything is going to be okay, you hear me, Ri? Everything is alright, I am here for you. Air felt her quirk settle back beneath her skin. It would be alright, her brother was here, and he promised to keep her safe. Aizu was here. It was alright. The water continued to shoot out, spraying up dust and flooding the area with chemical-filled muck. But Air continued to lean against the hydrant, clutching her necklace, and on the other side, Izuku lay curled in agony, listening to her calming breaths, breathing with her, and just a few feet away two heroes fought, one doused bone deep in the frigid water, their fire abilities kept at bay by the second's burning glare as the other one dodged the first's still powerful fists, waiting for an opening to tie them up. Hatred burned brighter than the first's strongest flames in their red-orange eyes. This was not something that could easily be covered up, even if it was for the night. You would attack an innocent civilian? You don't know what that boy has done. Get out of my way, Eraserhead. He has done nothing to justify this. I know that. He's a kid. He's protecting villains. Somehow that doesn't seem like the whole story. In fact, the second landed a punishing blow. Sir Night Eye tells an entirely different story, and so does every other hero who has worked with him, bar one, who was jailed not even a year later, and who he wouldn't work with. But sure, let's hear these heinous crimes that entitle you to attack a preteen and their kid sister. Move, Eraserhead. Do not think I will hesitate. You will need to blink soon. The next fist was aimed straight at his face. Mr. Eraserhead, blink now. The stream of water sprayed sideways, redirected so it returned to spray right into the number 2 hero's face. The gathering flames spluttered out again as the mammoth figure stumbled back at the assault, the stream following him. The grin that graced the underground hero's face could only be described as demonic. Thanks, kid. The capture cloth shot out, trapping the other hero, and with a loop pulling the man into the range of the hydrant without the water needing to brutalize Deku's hands in order to redirect it. The underground hero secured him even as he pulled a phone from his pocket and dialed for the cops and an ambulance, running a concerned eye running over the duo. You look like hell. Ha. Ugh, feel it too. How is Eri? You really are family. Air? You hear that? Sound off if you're alive over there. Oh, I'm fine. I'm alive. Any injuries? A frustrated pause. Do you hurt anywhere? Anything feel weird? And no, I'm good, I'm alright. Fine. I'm alive. Alright, you're clearly not fine. Can you stay there for a moment though? Yes, I can. Good dash. Look at you, going soft over them. I always thought you were more like a Endeavor's sneer was cut off as a foot was planted firmly in his face. What was that about going soft? Never before had sirens sounded so welcome to Izuku, and that was no easy feat considering his last year as Izuku Midoriya. He drifted off in a haze of pain to the constant thrum of the throbbing sensation all over and the sirens. Distantly he heard someone shouting, but nothing registered in his hazy mind. Deku. Hey Deku. Kid, stay with me, kid. Come on, your sister needs you. Pull it together. Kid. Deku, come on, Kobayashi. It was oddly peaceful. As a scream entered the melody, preceded by a quiet muttering. The voice was so familiar. even as it was joined by his own quietly soothing, although he knew he wasn't speaking. That's right, he had to hang on. He had a family, and they believed in him. He'd hold on for them. He'd hold on for Eri. Don't worry, Ri, I'm here, it's okay. His hand reached out patting something. It was the thought that mattered, right? Or was that something else? He couldn't think. Couldn't focus. That wasn't good. He needs to be able to do that or else people would notice. People would find out. That could be bad. Why would it be bad again? It's okay, little sheepling, I'm not going anywhere. The scream had faded to sobs and his voice was gone now too, so he caught their barely their wet chuckle amidst the sobs. That was better. He'd made them laugh. Remember to smile. Okay, my little sheep, why? I'm not going anywhere. Okay. Their voice was quiet, but they were no longer crying. Deku managed a smile before fading into the abyss that welcomed him with open arms. He almost wanted to laugh. That was new. Since when did something welcome him so willingly? Since when, a dark voice whispered to him, did he not fight? Did he lie? Since when did abandoning Eri ever become an option? Never. Even if he was stuck returning as a ghost, he would be there for her. He pushed the fuzzy blackness that surrounded him away, and wasn't that just ironic, and awoke. Beep, beep, beep. He was greeted with a white wall and a comforting warmth pressed against his front, which thankfully remained unburned. Beep. Smiling, he reached over to run his fingers through her pale off-white blue hair. Beep. He sighed in contentment, pain medication making his whole perception of the world fuzzy. Beep. Either way, he needed to get someone's attention. Now was the time to act, with the Endeavor incident no doubt recently going public depending on how long he'd been out. Beep. And he needed to strike while the iron was hot. He could only hope the window of opportunity hadn't passed, or else he would have to wait even longer and use someone else to head the anti-Endeavor campaign, keeping to the shadows himself. Beep. One of their reputations weren't going to come out clean. This wasn't his first rodeo, and while he didn't have much to lose, unlike Endeavor, it would definitely set him back, and that fact alone would make the other desperate and more unpredictable. Beep. With that firmly in mind, Deku reached up and with his good hand and shakily yanked on the cords connecting him to the heart monitor. Beep. Silence fell. It didn't even take 2 seconds before the door went flying off its hinges as it slammed into the wall. There stood Eraserhead, his eyes wide and awake for what was probably the first time in a long while as he charged in the room. Jesus Christ, where is the nurse? Someone get a— Oh. Hello, Mr. Eraserhead, I suppose dash. He was cut off by a familiar blonde charging in as well. Aizawa, what's going on? His voice was oddly quiet for him, almost an outside-speaking voice. A herd of nurses moved to push their way in only for them to stop when they saw their patient perfectly safe. They left to give the group some space. He would undoubtedly get a lecture later. Christ, kid. The underground hero sank against the wall with a sigh. Hello, Mr. Present Mike. Nice to see you again. Now, like I was saying, I guess I owe you a thank you for the save, Mr. Eraserhead. Do either of you mind telling me how long I've been under? It's 12 o'clock, you've been out for 18 hours. You should be in a coma. I've found I'm surprisingly hard to kill, but that's not important at the moment dash. Not import dash. I need some things I need you to do for me. This is a— Shoot, this will be a— It's an opportunity one can't pass up. Where are my things? I'm going to need my phone at a bare minimum, but hopefully my mask, jacket, left shoe, you know what? Just bring me everything. Here's my watch, and my bag is right here too. They wouldn't listen to me when I said you would want your things right away. Deku turned to see Eri awake, staring up at him with her trusting red eyes. I knew you would wake soon, you wouldn't leave me behind. Of course not, I'd stay even if only to haunt you, Ri. Now that you're awake though, did you get yourself checked over by a doctor? I didn't want you to worry while you were sleeping. I made sure the doctor told you. Didn't you hear them earlier? I'm sorry, I don't remember much from while I was sleeping. I'm sure it helped keep me from worrying though. Air grinned happily. You did well. He gave her a few soft pats on the head. Now then, have you eaten lunch yet? Her expression quickly changed to guilty then. I wanted to eat with you. Did you at least have breakfast? Yes. She ate a few bites of a bagel with salmon and cream cheese, hardly breakfast. Eraserhead gestured to the not even half-eaten food on the side table. He had stayed behind while Present Mike went off to get his stuff, so he now sat slumped in one of the two stiff chairs that lined the walls. Both recently retuned to their spot, according to Deku's sharp, even while drugged, eyes. Tattletale, Eri murmured through her new bite of the food. Brat. Present Mike re-entered to see the information gatherer sitting peacefully on the bed, one hand gently untangling the hair of the small single-horned girl that lay on the bed curled against him, asleep once again. They would pause only occasionally to use their good hand to mess with the three objects that lay in front of him. A shoe, a clip, and a watch. A single wireless earbud was stuck in his ear on his good side. Off to the side his longtime friend sat watching all, now three, of them with the barest hints of a smile on his face, looking relaxed despite the circumstances. His black hair hung in disarray, but he had at least managed to change from the destroyed clothes he was wearing from last night. It was a peaceful scene and one he'd have been content to leave interrupted for much longer if keen green eyes had not locked onto his, interrupting the calm with just a few words. Right, I'm going to need you to break me out of here. I've been here too long already. The kid had to be actively trying to cut years off from his lifespan. It took no time at all after he had access to a computer for him to be leading other users in an open revolt against Endeavor or just crying for full disclosure on what led to his arrest. Once he had made himself a virtual base, taking various degrees and even playing neutral or doubtful to more discreetly turn people, he began anonymously leaking video and vocal with various excuses. From there he would mold the members from two separate angles. His first step was complete. Then came phase 2. Now that he had turned the hearts of the internet, all he had to do is have several concerned citizens come forward about the famed hero's temperament of his children and suspicions about his wife. He of course had already discreetly lined up a few actual witnesses or put them in a position where they would be compelled to come forward, but he'd add a few more to the mix. Once more giving evidence and examples to the rumors. Of course, the delicate thing for this part was keeping the heroes on his side. To do this he would need to keep a firm not all heroes, just Endeavor stance. It would involve him putting emphasis on heroes' rights, but making clear that heroes should not be allowed to get away with villainy of the worst kind just because they were famous. Endeavor should not be allowed to attack the defenseless or terrorize their family. It was approaching dinner time when the doctor finally paid him a visit. They glanced in the room, giving him a disapproving frown the moment they saw him. You just had a life or death experience. I can't understand how your generation can stay so fixated on those machines. You most definitely shouldn't be up yet, much less playing on that. It will strain your eyes, and that position is horrible for you wounds. Yes, well, they stopped me from escaping, so this was the lesser evil. Besides, this is just preventative measures, if you really think about it. Just as important as healing, really. Deku absently muttered. He didn't even look up, continuing to speedily type far faster than most people could dream, even with only one hand at his disposal due to his burns. Is there any way I can be taken off this pain medication? Or have the dose lessened? I can't think properly with all the fog in my head. You want to be taken off the pain medications? Young man, I know they don't hurt that much now, but you have third-degree burns. Oh. Deku's head snapped up as he actively realized someone new had arrived for the first time. Sorry, I just meant, sorry, I didn't realize you were there. Is it possible to take me off at least a little of this medicine though? I know what it feels like, really. It has happened before to a lesser extent, but I really need to focus now. It's very important. Well, while on the topic of important things, we were unable to get in contact with your legal guardian. Your younger sister has been helping us out. She even showed us where you carried all medical records you might need on you. I think I should ask why you need to do that. You understand how this all looks to us, don't you? Especially since your sister wouldn't let us read it? She read it to us. Izuku couldn't help the proud smile he sent Eri, his little sister. She had learned so well. Although it was somewhat funny how she protected all but the information they needed. She'd make a great info broker someday if she wanted to be one. And it wasn't like he hadn't properly edited out any dangerous information on his files. I'm sorry, my phone is broken and I can't seem to remember their number off the top of my head with all this fuzz. Deku chose to respond to the only non-question in the storm before diverting back to his goal. What is today's date? What? No, I don't have a concussion. Most strong pain meds just make it hard for me to think. He turned his head in unison with the doctor. Eraserhead had activated his quirk. It deactivated and he returned his attention to his stare down with the doctor. The doctor continued but seemed shaken. What is the date? You weren't his doctor before, were you? This time it was Eraserhead who spoke, eyeing him unsurely although his quirk wasn't active yet. Yes, well, that was the late night shift. I'm his doctor for now. Why don't you have a seat? Don't do that. Both of their heads swiveled to him, but Deku had returned to typing away. It was a nice attempt really, but come on, Katsuo, you didn't really think that disguise would work on me? Your hair is showing. I said I wouldn't really care if you tried that with me occasionally, but I do have to draw the line when you try it with my guests. The apparently not doctor, Katsuo, gave a put-upon sigh. Guests? Ah, come on Deku, you're in a hospital room. That can't really count, can it? Nice try. You're getting better, but I know so it won't bug me too much. That's where you're slipping up. Now while you're posing as my doctor, can you lower my dosage? I'm busy. You got it, boss. Katsuo laughed as he bounced over to the drip. Wait a second, Eraserhead's capture tap shot out catching his hand. Does he even know how to properly do that? You can't just be messing with those things. Katsuo grinned over at him, running his free hand through his almost shoulder-length hair, a dyed brown from the tips to around his ears where it faded to his natural coloring blue. Scary. But don't worry, I'm qualified. All right then. They relented and the capture tape settled once more. Where do you find these people? Deku shrugged, grinning at him. The man dissolved into quiet laughter again. You are the worst. I know, you tell me. Katsuo turned back to where Eraserhead sat, Present Mike sleeping by his side. I was a bit worried of people going after him while he was like this, but I see I shouldn't have worried. I'm Ito Katsuo, Deku here's friend. Who are you? Shota Aizawa. Eraserhead's eyes widened as he finished speaking even as he tried to stop upon realizing that something was wrong. Deku sighed. He does that a lot, don't worry Katsuo. Be nice. When am I ever? Deku and Eraserhead spoke over each other calmly. Surprisingly often for all the talk you give, I don't know. Well, that was a demonstration of his quirk. Don't tell him that. Katsuo pouted. Eraserhead interrupted them before they could start. What are you talking about? Fine, Katsuo sighed. My quirk is called Remix, although it's never been officially named, I just call it that. If someone answers my question or follows a suggestion I made as a question, they have to answer or do whatever question I pose next. But the harder they struggle against it, the more questions I can ask before it ends. I would realize if I was forced to answer a question. Well, that's the thing, after it ends they completely forget they were ever under my control. All actions or things they did, they'll think they did of their own motivations. That's a very useful quirk? Yeah, Katsuo laughed. And can you believe I used to only use it to make people embarrass themselves in bars before I met this guy? Eraserhead activated his quirk, glaring at him. Sorry, it's a habit. Old habits die hard, you know? All right then, it's a good thing you decided to stop by though. You still have Jin's number, right? Give him a call, will you? I might need a bit of his help soon. Oh, already? Yes. Deku blinked a few times, clearing his head. Shoot. They've noticed, Todoroki has a good lawyer. I'm almost jealous. Let me see. Sure. You're kidding, right? That's the oldest trick. And it's lasted because it works. Yeah. I'll give Tanaka a call now. You go to your nerdy stuff, boss. Wait, your friend's called Tanaka Jean? Eraserhead seemed incredulous as the name registered. And Jean Tanaka is a common placeholder name for things like credit card ads or shady people checking into hotels. Similar to John Smith or Jane Doe. I know, he named himself kinda early, and he always was a bit naive and straight-laced. Good old Tanaka. He was in too deep when he realized it. You mean he was told? Wait, that you had to tell him. You met him when he was like 22, are you telling me? Yep, but not quite on the age. Oh, shoot, sorry about that. Mind shaking my hand? Don't worry about it, I'm half surprised you didn't take the opportunity for the thing. Izuku grinned happily up at him as he emphasized what no doubt was some sort of inside joke for them. Katsuo froze staring at him. You did that on purpose, didn't you? I'm not all that worried about what you'll make me do, so yes? Does that mean every time I've got you was? All but two was on purpose. Deku grinned once he was free yet again. It's interesting being under it, besides, I'm confident there's more to your quirk and it's bugging me. Katsuo broke into laughter. You take quirk analysis too far, boss. One day that quirk fascination of yours is so going to get you. It already has, but I think we both know I can take care of myself. You know it, boss, I'll be back. He flipped out his phone, dialing as he left. What are you planning? Eraserhead was watching him with a sharp gaze. It wasn't a question. Which plan? Do you want to hear, Mr. Eraserhead? I'm always planning a thing or 10. At the hero's look, he half shrugged, gesturing vaguely at the laptop he was typing on. But currently, the main one is the downfall of Endeavor. There is only one reason I won't work for someone, they continued in the silence that followed their declaration, and when it comes to heroes that I won't, I make a point to let the public know. And I tear them down from the pedestal they placed themselves on. Alright, why wouldn't you work with someone then? If they've done something so horrible I can no longer tolerate them, or their reason for wanting information is a bad one, most of the time I'm far more lenient with heroes, but I can't stand it when they try and use the leniency everyone gives them to purposefully hurt others. Innocence. I won't stand for it. I see. Even if I didn't disapprove of him before, I would still be doing this though. He aimed his fire at Ri. While she was asleep. He made her cry. So, I am going to destroy him. Eraserhead has never been afraid of the bright, green child. It was pretty hard to be. He looked so young, especially with how small he was and his freckles, and while he was determined, he seemed to only see the good in others, not to mention all the times in the short time he had known the child he had neared tears. All in all, he didn't make for a very threatening figure. But in that moment, he could see how the child could have faced the organization Sir Night-Eye had struggled to even find for months. A group with strong quirks and trained pro fighters, and yet the muttering Greenette still came out on top without a scratch. If he was a lesser man, he would even be a little afraid at the steely, determined light in the other's eyes. Oh, legally, of course, I'm not. I didn't mean, I wasn't, I don't think I even could. I mean, you say how that went. And just like that, the moment was over and the awkward preteen was back. And wasn't that at least slightly disconcerting? It was now officially going on the 12th hour of Deku's anti-Endeavor campaign, and Present Mike was more than a little concerned for the kid. You should be getting to bed just about now, don't you think? It's getting sort of late? Yes, well, I'm on a bit of a time crunch here. Keep it down though, Air is sleeping and I doubt anyone wants to wake up Mr. Eraserhead. And you should be asleep too. They had at least managed a loud indoor voice. It was a really good thing Air was such a deep sleeper if he was going to be spending a long time in the hospital for observation, or whatever the doctors were calling it. I need to finish this. Some accounts are really putting up a good fight, and after that I need to update a few of my files and I need to deal with a few things before I can send out the 3 short reports I promised, not to mention I'm waiting for someone and dash. I get it, you're busy. But sleep is a really important thing too. See? Even Shota goes to sleep every now and then. One of Present Mic's gesturing hands smacked the mentioned hero straight in the face, knocking the hero off his shoulder where he had been previously sleeping. Sweat slipped down the side of his face as he laughed nervously, glancing between Deku, who still hadn't looked up from the laptop, and the demon he had just literally smacked awake. Yamada, the name was ground out, causing the sweat to begin pouring down his face like a waterfall. Deku, some help over here? Deku didn't even look up, caught up once again in his own world, or rather, others' worlds and thoughts. They turned their attention back to the now awake Aizawa. WWW what? You're up early. Hee 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 ha ha. I'm going to end you. As if to make up from the total silence that had consumed the room completely, the room erupted in a cacophony of sound as Present Mike made a dash for the door, knocking the 2 chairs to the ground with a clatter, and taking the other with it, buying himself enough time to reach the exit before he was caught by the ever-present capture cloth. He managed to cling to the door even with a few tugs, stammering vague platitudes and attempting to explain how murder was bad and they should make the hero's choice and spare him. It would be much quicker after all. He could go straight back to sleep. Just as present Mike was resigning himself to the inevitable, a quiet giggle interrupted them. "The children!" Present Mike cried, releasing the door to gesture towards the now awake heir. "You can't kill me in front of children?" Present Mike, now no longer clinging to anything, was shoved out the door. "You're right, you two. Behave." The door slammed firmly shut behind them. "They seem lively, don't you think?" Slipping from the darkness was an unnaturally tall, willowy, white-haired man. His covered eyes glinted in the window's limited light like that of a wolf's beneath dark, tinted lenses. "I suppose, but if you put your life on the line daily like that, who can begrudge them a bit of fun?" Deku responded absently, his fingers continuing to fly across the keys. "Yes." The newcomer leaned forward, a sharp claw like nail taping on the computer screen. "With all the work and danger they put up with, who can judge them for resting some?" "I didn't mean they're stuck in the spotlight. It's really not the SA dash. You know I didn't mean it like that. Besides, this is for my own selfish motivations." "Ah yes, your selfish motive. To help a family get out from under a false hero's thumb. Dikairu, I'd really hate to see what you think is being selfless." "I don't really think I ever am." Jean laughed easily, head thrown back for a second before shaking his head. "You, Hiku, are just about as close as one can get to being an angel. And that's coming from me." "Who is your friend though? She seems new." Izuku spluttered helplessly for a moment before recovering. "Oh right, Jean, this is my new sister Kobayashi heir. This is Tanaka Jean." "Jean is fine. Your family to Dikairu now after all." Air nodded shyly from the other side of Deku, glancing once at him for reassurance before returning to stare at the man standing beside them, who offered a smile and a small wave, carefully not revealing any teeth. "Oh, okay, what do you mean? Why do you call him Dikairu though?" The man grinned in genuine amusement, this time flashing sharpened rows of thin fangs at them. "Because he can do anything, and one day the whole world will take note and lay itself at his feet." I'm not trying to take over the world." The two pale-haired people exchanged grins. "Of course not," Jean patted his head, "but one day you'll all the same have the power to change its path, if you don't already. With your fire it's inevitable that you will, and you'll always have us at your back. So remember that, got it? You freed too many of us from places where death was the best outcome we could even dream of for us to ever leave your side." Izuku's face turned beet red. "You're really giving me too much credit here. I'm sure all of you would have found a way yourself, you especially Jean. I did notice some of your plans. I mean, sure, it was only the beginning, but they weren't for the escape you're thinking." "Oh." Deku turned to pat Air on the head and pull her close. "Hey Air, look at this." Deku's eyes glanced around the screen before landing on a comment he'd already seen. "We've got official support. Phase 3 is a go." Jean smiles slightly at him before lightly shoving his forehead with the back of a single finger, which I hope is super secret information broker code for getting some rest. "Dikairu, believe it or not, most people get a solid 6 hours at least. The world won't end. I'll even keep an eye on it for you." "You don't need to do that." Jean faked a yawn, causing two more to echo his. "Really? You don't actually plan on dash?" Jean yawned again, even wider. Two yawns followed yet again. I got it. Izuku settled down in the covers, making sure his burnt back was face up, shoving the now closed computer at Jean with his one good hand. "Good night, Jean. Go to sleep, do you?" Jean patted the informant's fluffy hair. "Night, Izu." Already half asleep and his mind oddly fuzzy with the cocktail of painkillers the doctors still insisted on, Deku barely even realized the slip-up, much less catch on to who else was in the room at the time. Jean grinned eerily as he absently shut the curtains, cutting off the only source of light in the room, and settled back down in his corner to keep watch. It was quiet when the pro-heroes returned to the room, with not even the light from Deku's laptop casting a glow about the room. Much to their relief, they had thought he was never going to go to sleep despite his injuries and clear tiredness. "About time the brat went to sleep," Shota muttered, using one hand to casually reach over muffle whatever Yamada was going to shout in case Deku wasn't a deep sleeper. Somehow they couldn't see him as one, so it was hardly safe to be making more than minimal noise and dragging him over to the chairs, which now stood upright again. Together they tensed as realization dawned. Deku was practically tied to the bed after all, and Air wouldn't be awake enough to think of it even if it was likely she would, and began carefully scanning the room far more thoroughly than before. Present Mike allowing his eyes to drift seemingly lazily to divert any suspicion. Not freezing for more than a half-second, he calmly continued over to the chairs and sat down, pretending to let his guards down by acting completely unaware. It wouldn't work for Eraserhead. The mere sight of his high school friend acting with any of the same nonchalance set off so many red flags. He always had an eye out for their surroundings, checking rooms as they entered them, or entering in bizarre ways to catch the occupants off guard. You just had to know where to look to see it. And with how little information they had, they definitely needed to be careful now. Sure, Air could have moved the chairs, but the odds were not that high. The duo found him at the same time, Shota preparing his capture cloth and once again taking the proactive approach, although Yamada did prepare for a fight, and speaking up, "Who are you?" "Yikes, you don't really have any manners, do you? It's only polite to introduce yourself first." That man was abnormally tall, but not extremely so, and dressed in loosely fitting, colorless, casual clothes consisting of a gray long-sleeved shirt and black pants. His limp gray hair was pulled loosely back, but long strands still hung into his face, which was partially covered by dark glasses that held an eerie light behind them. "This is a private hospital room after visiting hours. I won't ask again." "Well, we appear to be in the same boat then, don't we? Whoa, whoa, whoa." They quickly raised both hands as the cloth shot towards them, ducking as they went. "I'm Tanaka Jean. Kyer mentioned I'd be coming. Probably. Is this guy joking?" Yamada muttered. For him it was muttering, it would be pretty loud for anyone else. Deku actually did call for someone by that name. "Can you prove you know him?" Yamada now turned to Aizawa. "Are you joking?" Sure. Of course I can prove I know him. I've got a photo of us on me, but can you? After all, it was a hero that put him here, suffering from burn wounds and who knows what else. The kid know us. But if we're avoiding waking him up and ignoring I was the one who called the ambulance and brought said hero in, then sure, Present Mike also has a photo. Eraserhead felt smugly pleased that Yamada had insisted on taking so many photos while they were at UA in that moment, no matter how much he had complained at the time. And no, he didn't care. He was being petty. Now or back then? Where does he even find these people? Tanaka muttered unhappily, pulling out from his wallet a photo of a younger Izuku standing on a raised root with Tanaka sitting beside him, so they were close to the same height. "There he is with me a few years ago. It's almost funny how short he was back then. I would have sworn he was under 4 feet, if I wasn't sure nobody would find my corpse if he found out." Jean laughed easily like they weren't talking about murder. "Fine," Shota grumbled. Present Mike pulled out his phone and after searching decided on a photo of the 4 of them along with Midnight. Eraserhead stared tiredly at the camera as he slumped uncaring in a headlock. "Okay then. I'm keeping an eye on them for a while. Do what you want." Tanaka crossed back over across the room and gracefully flopped onto the floor, resting an arm on their knee, the other absently scratching at a paper as if doodling. It did not go unnoticed by either hero as he slipped an earpiece into one ear. Exchanging looks, Present Mike got comfortable while Eraserhead settles down to keep an eye on the room. He would wake the other up when it was time for his shift, or when something strange seemed to be going on. Neither of them attempted to talk any further. When morning came, Present Mike watched Tanaka slink over to the boy and tap the other's forehead gently with the back of one finger before sliding their sketchbook and a folded piece of its paper to rest by their neck. They tapped their head one more time and then nodded to Present Mike and leaving. Nudging Shota awake, he followed only to find a deserted corridor. He carefully looked around to catch a glimpse of the odd man before giving it up as a lost cause and going to get the others some breakfast. He might as well make the most of it and stretch his legs. Besides, he ate hospital food too often considering his chosen profession. He didn't plan on eating it when he was well too. The scene he returned to was not at all like the one he had left behind. For one, no one was sleeping, and for two, it wasn't peaceful anymore. For one, the door had been knocked clean off its hinges and was warped by the flames. Dead center of the now scorched room stood Endeavor in all of his flaming glory, In front of him, glaring ferociously despite his state, was Aizawa, who had clearly taken the worst of the flames, blood seeping from his new wounds, mild burns covering his body and his capture cloth burnt beyond recognition, much less use. A foot stayed slammed on his chest, hindering his already labored breathing as he was sent to the floor. They had clearly been caught off guard. "You will stop this, Eraserhead. I may respect your work as a hero, but this is your last warning. Don't think I won't gauge your precious eyes out." That was all it took. Present Mike slid to the side. He didn't want to send the number 2 hero into where Deku lay helpless, struggling against where he had been practically tied to the bed, and screamed as loudly as he could. Endeavor hit the corner of the wall with a crash and kept going, smashing into the next room and out of the building as he held on for as long as he could, not allowing the noise to wane off. He stood there breathing heavily for a few seconds to appease his aching lungs before his mind caught up. He wouldn't be able to fight Endeavor successfully, not by himself, and Shota needed medical attention right then. Plus there were the other patients to keep in mind. He doubted Endeavor had been sent more than a couple blocks. Thinking as quickly as he could before tossing his unlocked phone to Deku. "Call as many heroes as you can hear. Tell them Endeavor has gone rogue. Once Endeavor is far enough away, get the doctors to help Shota." Yamada took off at a run, jumping out of the building through the newly created opening and using his screams to slow his descent. And, don't try that at home, kids. Deku wasted no time beginning to dial numbers to explain the situation, starting with the ones the other hero had favorited, the names barely registering. He figured those that knew Present Mike best would be most likely to respond. Moving on to the regular contacts, and barely stopping himself before he called Cammy Woods and, to his horror, a member of Endeavor's own agency. He had to spend more time explaining the situation to these, but many had already heard about the situation by then. All the while, as he talked for what felt like hours but what was really just 5 or 6 minutes, he tapped away on his computer to email or get a hold of even one member from his group. This was his fault. How could he have been so weak? That's what he was. He even made sure whenever someone talked to him he would be reminded, yet somehow he had forgotten already. He was useless. A blockhead, straw man. Easy to manipulate. Stupid. Useless. Couldn't do anything right. He would be sure he wouldn't forget again, but later, he had to do what he could for now. He'd gotten the nurses in already, who had immediately hustled Eraserhead off for treatment. He had been assured the other would be fine. He'd insisted that they take air and look her over as well until a relative came to pick her up. Sliding out of the bed, ignoring the searing pain that shot up from the bottom of his feet, he moved over, grabbing the mask, already reset and ready for use, and a jacket. He slid both on, pulling up the hood, and took off through the hole that remained in the wall. They were on the 5th story, but that was fine. He'd practiced this, not to mention all the actual use the skill had gotten when he had at first started his trade. It took no time at all for him to reach ground level and then to descend below into the sewers. He had to begin preparations. The first step was to figure out the flow of the fight and who was involved. Then came the second step. Step 3 should take a half hour if he was lucky, but he would need a backup location for the off chance. With that in mind, he could do step 2. He'd need to plan out all possible outcomes for the next 30 minutes, hour and a half markers. It was time to redirect the city's water. The final step for his plan was the issue he wouldn't be able to plan for when they would arrive, or if. And that could cause problems. Dear God, he hoped Jean was right. This was his fault and he needed to fix it. But even if that was the case, he'd rather get help than anyone else get hurt because of him. He'd messed up big time. This was his fault and he was useless. Why couldn't he do anything right? Dikairu? Hey, Dikairu. A hand waved in front of his face. You said you had a plan? And there was Jean, grinning with fangs on full display beside him, the sisters Suzy and Serre, and behind them Katsuo and company. Yes, I think I do, although it'll be far easier with your guys' help if you're offering. Just leave it to us, boss. Katsuo grinned as the sisters gave either a salute or a thumbs up. Ko nodded. So what's the word, Dikairu? Alright, Ko, I need you to. He would fix this. He became what he was to help others. He should have known he would mess it up. Flames leapt from the streets to the buildings and their crumpled fronts in what must have looked like a truly apocalyptic scene, only added to by the completely undisturbed, albeit empty, streets that accompanied it. Fire trucks and ambulances waited in a line behind the police blockades that capped the street. Heroes stood at hand to enforce it, a great many even lining the rooftops like a flock of overgrown parrots. Amidst the chaos there was a single man, standing tall even while encircled by 6 of his fellows. Midnight stood directly behind him, Best Jeanist, Quirk, Fiber Master, and Backdraft, a water control quirker, on one side and Present Mike and on the other. Standing almost dead center in front of him was Miruko, the rabbit hero, an unnamed quirk, and Hawks, Quirk, Fierce Wings. All of them looked more than a little worse for wear, yet no one jumped in to help. It was disappointing to watch. All those heroes that just sat around watching, even while keeping a perimeter was important, they could have swapped out when the fighters tired. Endeavor wasn't immune to his own flames, they could easily tire him out and win that way. Yet there they all stood lining the rooftops, standing behind officers. All watching and yet no one taking any action. It was times like these when he began to wonder, what had he ever seen in the world? But why would that matter? He couldn't do anything either way. He shut the thoughts down as they tried to creep up and overtake his mind. His eyes refocused on the 6 fighters, waiting for the signal to start. There were still people fighting, so all was not lost. And even if he couldn't do much, he had to do something to help. Even if he could only help a little bit. K boss, L team is complete. Got it? K team, are you a go? The offensive team is ready to go. Deku, give us a countdown. Susie responded. He could practically see her grin. Jean snorted loudly over the comms. Hey, that's my nickname for him, make your own. It's different. No, it's not. A is a go in 5. Speak now or forever hold your peace, guys. We're about to step into the spotlight. No one spoke up. So, Deku took in a final deep breath, nodding to himself before he spoke. Initiate Plan A. Initiate Plan A. A swirl of a near-transparent film, almost like the liquid used for bubbles, circled easily onto the battlefield, floating along invisible air currents towards where the heroes were facing off. A thin shimmering strand formed for each of the heroes sans Endeavor, coming to rest on them. The area they paused on seemed to grow outward, the strands thickening as the heroes got swamped in it, despite at the same time it seemed like the strange material wasn't changing size at all. The translucent thing lazily covered the struggling heroes and then slipped away into nothingness itself as if it had never been there. Endeavor was left to glare menacingly around the area as if challenging the film to try that with him or for any of the other heroes to take up their places and fight him. Show yourself and fight me, villain. Your cowardly attacks will not work on me. A lone figure loped out of the shadows, a dark cloak covering his head with a scarf-like mask covering his face that the hood didn't. He was dressed solely in black, making the white wolf ears and tail peeking out from holes in the cloak contrast sharply, as well as the pale fangs and bright bloody red lips that made up the grinning snarl painted on the scarf over his mouth. 2 different gold earrings sparkles fully from where they hung from one ear. Villain, that seems like pretty strong words for someone wreaking havoc on the streets. Endeavor once more spoke up demandingly. So you are the one who made them disappear. What is your goal, villain? Whoa, disappear? Pull back there, buddy. Hold your horses. That is a pretty big accusation there. They look tired, they're just resting up for round 2, you know? I'm just here to keep you busy meanwhile. He sent a blatant distasteful look at the watching heroes. Well, to be fair, and to answer your question I suppose, he wasn't the one to actually do that either. A new person hopped down from the 2nd floor of a building. This one's face was veiled in gold and blue that matched the clothes that hung loosely about them. A black necklace dangled on their neck and black rings rested atop silky gloves. With a vague gesture they continued talking. But that wasn't what you really cared about, was it? Do you have any other questions before we get to the beatdown? I mean, do you really think you'll win? What do you mean to imply by that, you and your little friend the scum beneath my toes? I've never even seen or heard of you before. You don't stand a chance. Flames exploded around him before sharply dying down again to lick around him. The second raised their arms making an airy placating gesture. Fine, fine, why are you causing this whole scene anyway? What do you mean why? Endeavor thundered, his flames rising once more as he spoke, unmindful of the first one's snickers. That useless squirt decided to challenge me. Who does he think he is with that useless information quirk of his? He might as well be Quirkless. The snickers cut off with a growl. That no-good brat decided to try and get rid of all my hard work just because he didn't like how I raised my children. Look at Shoto, he's at UA. Does that brat even know how hard it is to get accepted there, and he dares question my methods? Dares to challenge me. They easily glided closer in a movement so natural it was difficult to notice just what he was doing, blue and gold fabric drifting soundlessly after him. So the accusations are false? No, but does that really matter? Look where he ended up. A true testament to my legacy. No. The word was cold and seemed to resonate much louder despite the calmer tone. Not your legacy. If he becomes a hero, it will be to his own hero name's credit, not for your glory. Endeavor turned to the one dressed in black as they spoke up. And with that truth said, the second took control again, dramatically raised their arms up, flicking their palms to face Endeavor at the end of the motion. Water spouted up in a stream that encircled Endeavor, splashing out onto the first one's clothes, but the spiraling wave itself only brushing their feet. The blue one swept their arms next, and a new rush of water rose up answering the call, this one from directly behind them, and went sweeping to greet Endeavor. The introduction of even more water twisting and tearing about them making escape even more difficult. The one in black hopped back at the second wave, carefully making a show of skirting around the flood's end point, leaping over the second's continuing stream to lean casually on them. The air between the two far too much like this was an average day for them to be described as anything but casual as they stood amidst the surging tide. A few words were whispered between the two before a form was spotted gliding through the water with preternatural ease. A gurgling scream resounded through the air, muffled by the frothing liquid, and then the waters calmed, slowly sinking down to reveal the still mildly flooded battleground. The ground was cracked and uneven in more places than not, large chunks missing, and the buildings weren't much better off, and everything seemed to be completely soaked in water, although none seemed to have touched the blockades. In a more positive light, the fires had long since been put out and much of the water was draining away. The fight had been over in an instant, if that. The police surged forward, removing the blockade to let the emergency vehicles through. Just as they reached the pair, however, the veiled one raised a hand in the stop gesture. Both of the figures seemed to shimmer as they stood there. The veiled one showed their empty hands for a moment as if they were a magician preparing for their next trick, posing one hand momentarily at the ready, and then they snapped. Just like that, the two were gone as if they had never been there. It wasn't much longer before the 6 missing heroes were returned, each lying unconscious, with their wounds painstakingly treated, on stretchers, 3 where the first came from, 3 where the second had been. The authorities immediately acted, rushing over to check on them and put anyone with quirks capable of healing to work dealing with the damage. The fight cleanup was already underway, meaning it was time to go before they got too far into it and escape became difficult. Deku motioned for the 3 with him to follow, and the 4 of them quickly made their way together to hopefully find Jin and Katsuo at the agreed-upon meeting place before things calmed enough for people to notice Deku was missing. Deku wanted there to be no connections to be made between him and the mysterious heroes that debuted just seconds ago. Even though the heroes that they had replaced fighting Endeavor would swear they were shown free quirk use licenses by the masked duo, it still wouldn't look good for the very person who Endeavor was looking for to have strong ties to them at the moment. Especially if the 2 were to be used later in the mess. Of course, they would never be able to play a major part even if they weren't counting on complete anonymity. So, how do you think it went? Jin grinned at the group of 4 as they entered. He was leaning against the bar in comfortable but colorful for him clothes. A deep red shirt and navy sweatpants. You guys were amazing, Deku enthused, and yours and Ko's teamwork was so in sync. Kagitaisho's face turned a light red. Thanks, boss. Katsuo gave a joking salute. I was including you in the yours part. You did beautifully. I doubt anyone even imagined the honesty behind the confession was partly gotten because of your quirk. And you played your part superbly. Not to mention you, Susie, well done with the camera duty. Thanks, but you were a majorly big help. Deku acknowledged the comment with a smile, but otherwise moved on, and Sare, perfect timing with the wave. I know precision can be tricky, especially as you and Cogitatio and Katsuo couldn't fully communication. Jean wonderfully done with preparation and relay too. I know you'd have done amazing if it came to course B. Course it wouldn't come to that, Deku. You made the plan after all. No plan stands first contact. I didn't really do much. We're really lucky you guys carried it out so flawlessly, not to mention your teamwork. The sisters exchanged a sad look at the deflected comment before Susie reached over, sticking him in a headlock and ruffling hair. Keep telling yourself that, fearless leader, one day we'll have you admitting exactly how good you are. The group settled down after that, Deku taking a moment to glance over them. They were a bit roughed up, but they seemed happy and relaxed. A large change from how they were when he had originally pulled the group together. Tanaka Jean was inhumanly tall, seeming to lean on the tall side of 6 feet low 7, and at his actual age he might still grow more. He looked far older than he actual was since his quirk appeared. He had a fake ID to run the bar since he had started it when he was underaged. His hair was long and white, held in a low ponytail but with a few small bunches of strands hanging around his face and shoulder. He covered his eyes with sunglasses as he always did in the light of day. Ito Katsuo was about average height with shocking bright, sky blue hair that he dyed brown from around just above the ends of his ears to the lower ends where sometimes it ran blue again. Deku was never sure if that was purposeful or not, and he wouldn't guess either. With Katsuo both options was fairly likely. His hair really was that shocking shade of blue though. His eyes were a darker brown than the dyed parts of his hair, with the tiniest flecks of a lighter golden brown if you looked close enough. Johnson Susie was a few inches above average height and had sharp hazel eyes alongside roughly cut, short, brown hair that always seemed to fall into her face. Overall she had very average features and a weaker presence, causing many people tended to overlook her for it. Susie, appearance aside, was not someone easily overlooked, as she was highly observant and could argue with the best. The topic caught her interest. Both she and her sister were not from the country, having arrived just days before meeting him. Susie always made a point of carrying the same pink backpack with her wherever she went. Always, even if she had to use her quirk to sneak it past security points. Deku wasn't quite sure what was in it. Johnson Sare was the sister to Susie, although Deku doubted they were related through blood, and tended to be far quieter than Susie. She was also around average height but had blonde hair and eyes a different shade of hazel. Her hair was also kept short, but she pulled hers back to form a small ponytail. She tended to stick to baggy clothes while her sister wore shorts and both wore boots. Ko, or Velho to the sisters, or Cogit to Jean, was short for Cogitatio. Cogitatio was even quieter than Sare, only talking when needed. He kept his hair fairly short but was always dyeing his hair new colors. This time it was a horribly light green. His eyes, however, were light blue and always seemed foggy and far off, as if he was in a different world as everyone else. He was a bit below average, although that still put him taller than Izuku. Deku, hey, Deku, not that we don't enjoy your company, but you've been staring out into space muttering for a while now, and don't you need to return to the hospital? This can't be good for your burns. Burns? Sare burst into the conversation, frowning in big sisterly disapproval. I know, right? I don't see anything, but he is wearing that jacket. You okay? You aren't hurt, are you? Susie tilted her head as if it would give her a new perspective. I'm fine, don't worry. The group frowned at his casual dismissal. But you are right, it'll look bad if I go missing for too long. I should head back. Sare sighed. Let me then. All right. Deku felt the familiar feeling of Sare's filmy teleportation quirk spreading over him as Katsuo called out a final parting. Despite himself, Deku hoped they would visit him. Having arrived in the hospital room in one piece, Deku quickly padded over to the hospital bed and sat down. It looked like he might have to wait a while, and it was just his luck that he couldn't even distract himself with work. His computer lay uselessly on the foot of the bed, burnt to a crisp. Sliding his arms from the jacket sleeves, he resolved himself to do the next best thing and pulled from one of the pockets the sketchbook Jean had left him. At least he didn't have to just sit there and analyze all of his mistakes over and over again on repeat. That could wait. It turned out he shouldn't have worried so much about being caught absent. It had been hours since he had returned and not one person had set foot in the room. Honestly, if he didn't know Eraserhead and Present Mike had been just lightly injured in the fight, he would have worried. He'd already made sure Jean, with Katsuo, went to retrieve air from the nurses, after reminding them at least 6 separate times to say his name was Kobayashi instead of Tanaka. That would have been bad, especially considering the recent attack. Despite his attempt at alertness, his mind was soon wandering off to sleep, the adrenaline wearing off far too quickly for his tastes. His quickly healing, thank evolution for healing quirks, wounds adding a throbbing melody now that the effects of the pain medications were fading with the adrenaline that seemed to lull him even more into the grips of an uneasy sleep. What do you to tell him? Opal don't just. A commotion in the hallways snapped him from the haze he had fallen into. Sliding off the bed only to wince as he felt the weight of his whole body press on his badly burned feet, now without the numbing help of the painkillers. With a slight cry he crumbled to the ground, barely able to manage to contain the sound of his yelp as he landed on his burnt side as his sluggish mind prevented him from twisting to divert his fall onto the other side in time. The door slammed open despite the ongoing feeble protests of one of the hospital's nurses in the background. Even with adrenaline beginning to course through his veins at the thought of the unknown person, with his completely vulnerable position sprawled on the floor, unable to move, even with the pain making itself fully known again and sending black spots through his vision and blood pounding in his ears, even with all of this, Midoriya Izuku once more found his vision fading as he passed out. Vaguely, he found himself wondering if that meant he would have to explain himself more or less for his possible absence. If he woke up as he thought he would, with painkillers polluting his bloodstream to high heaven, he certainly hoped it would be the latter. He actually wasn't sure anymore how well he could lie at the moment. That was a first in a really, really long time. Deku stood in a far too familiar surrounding. Or rather not so much stood as looked over. Before him was, in all its soul-stealing glory, his middle school campus. He had gone back to it after he had begun his practice. After all, how could he help others if he couldn't face a small building he'd made a point of visiting once a night? But that didn't matter, it still counted for something at least to him. But that wasn't what caught his attention about the scene, it was the 4 boys that stood off to one side that did. But most notably, the shortest one who stood before the 4 and faced them. Just as he knew there had once been a 6th person, he knew what the lone student was going to say. That wasn't very nice, Kaken. You shouldn't use your quirk to hurt others. What would you know, you useless Deku? You don't even have one. Explosions punctuated the lead boy's words as they leaped from his palms, the 3 behind him likewise smirking, their own quirks at the ready. As if he could ever dream of getting past Kaken to reach them. So he stood at the ready, braced for whatever they threw at them, because even while still in elementary school he knew he stood no chance. And that no one would reach out to help him. Still, you can't be a very good hero if you're always attacking others. What was that? I'm going to be the very best hero. Better than even All Might, and nobody is going to get in my way, much less you. The blonde-haired boy charged then, with the others soon following, one going as far as to dump out his eye-catching yellow backpack out on the sidewalk. It was just his luck that the one book he'd have given anything for it not to happen to, the only one that was irreplaceable, was the one to slide to rest at Kachan's feet. Desperately he made a scramble for it, only for his fingers to be ruthlessly squashed beneath their boot, as they picked up the book and scoffed, "What's this? Hero analysis for my future? You don't actually think you could ever be a hero, do you? My God, you really are a Deku. Let me get this through your thick skull now, you can't and will never be a hero. In fact, if you want to be a hero so bad, I'll tell you what, why don't you do us all a favor and take a swan dive off a roof? Maybe in the next life you'll have a quirk." With that said, Kaken pressed his hands together, scorching the notebook as it caught fire, a few pages and torn pieces, either falling onto the walkway or drifting into the open wind. "Here, let me help you get rid of this fire before you burn your quirkless self with it. It's not like it was ever going to be useful for anything anyway." With that said, the notebook was tossed carelessly to the fountain that had sat previously undisturbed a short distance away. With a few parting blows and words, the unusually small green-haired and eyed child was left curled up with his belongings scattered about. Yet he was strong and more than a little used to it, so giving himself a moment to collect himself, he pulled himself together and gathered his stuff, pushing it carelessly into the discarded bag. Then he hurried to try and rescue his notebook. It was no use. It was not in a good mindset that he started home, sticking to the lesser-used paths that would take him directly home and avoid the rushing of the crowds. It was almost peaceful if not for his darkening thoughts, and because of them, he didn't realize the slime monster sliding up behind him until it was too late. Regardless of all the times he withstood cackins, teasing, and the number of times he had been otherwise roughed up by classmates, he had never felt fear like this. Those times he had a warning. He had a small voice that whispered they'd at least leave him alive, so nothing went on their record, quirks or not. It didn't matter if the victim was dead unless they spoke of potential, and no one wanted murder on their records so early. But now he was struggling for all he was worth as slop filled his nose, his mouth, his eyes, making drawing even a single breath of fresh air a sheer impossibility. He had never felt so hopeless in his life. And he hated it. And then just as suddenly as it came, he was free and could breathe again, gasping the blackness from his eyes, his vision returning bit by precious bit. Eyes watering slightly, he nonetheless turned to thank his savior, only to be met by a sight he had never expected to see anywhere off-screen. Never mind so close, never mind one-on-one or being saved by them. By All Might. Vaguely he almost thought it was worth it. The attack, every miserable moment in the last 5 years of his life, as long as it all led up to this moment. But he knew he was selfish and he needed to ask the question that now plagued his mind. Thank you so much? No problem, my boy. Now you must excuse me, I must dash. They picked up the bottled sludge villain and made to go with it clutched in their grip. They didn't think, just moved, and next they knew they were soaring across the sky, tightly gripping onto All Might's leg. No, wait, dash. It was an oddly freeing moment being up there. Free as a bird. When they landed, words once more evaded them as they tried to catch their breath, but the same could not be said for the pro-hero, who began lecturing them the moment they touched down. Please, I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking, but there is something I must ask you. Is it possible? Can someone without a quirk become a hero? I know it would be hard, unheard of really, but if they were truly determined and willing to face whatever obstacles came up, is it possible? The hero was silent for a half-beat as if judging their worth, their fate. No, I'm sorry, it is challenging enough for people with great and awe-inspiring quirks to become a hero. For someone completely without a quirk it would be impossible. But I'm sure with that determination there is plenty else you could become, like a police officer or a politician. These are also very important jobs, and far more realistic. But I must go. The symbol of peace held up the bottled slime villain and took off once more with a single bound. I am now exiting like a hero. Deku didn't see them land a short ways away and shrink down to an emancipated figure, nor did they see the blood that squirted from his mouth at the effort it had taken. With a sad, faraway look in his eyes, All Might trudged off to deliver the bottle to the police. They didn't look back at the roof they had just left where Izuku stood. Abandoned once more, but this time more disparaged than they had ever been. Even when Bakugo was at his absolute worst, Izuku stood by the railing of the deserted rooftop. He had laid himself at the mercy of the number one hero, the pillar of righteousness, and they had said the same everyone else had. They had found him unworthy. Why don't you do us all a favor and take a swan dive off a roof? Maybe in the next life you'll have a quirk. The words seemed to echo endlessly in his head. I'm sorry, Izuku, I'm so sorry, you won't ever be a hero. His mother's words joined them, said to him when he was just 5, despairingly seeking for comfort with his world torn to shreds not even hours before. No, I'm sorry, it is challenging enough for people with great and awe-inspiring quirks to become a hero. For someone completely without a quirk it would be impossible. All Might's booming voice joined the swarm, filling his head so he couldn't think. The railing went swimming into his vision. I'm sorry, Izuku, so sorry. Do us all a favor and take a swan dive. Without a quirk it would be impossible. I'm sorry, Izuku. Swan dive. Impossible. Without a quirk. Stupid useless Deku. So sorry. Deku. So sorry. Jump. Izuku moves without thinking. And jumped, falling through the wind as peace finally washed over him, the voices fading into a blissful silence allowing him to think clearly once more. And then he realized what he had done and panic took over. What was he thinking? How could he just, what would his mom do? He didn't want to go, didn't want to die like this. And then it was over, the terror receding as he was caught, arms wrapping around him and roughly throwing him over one shoulder so his cheek hit their back. He'd been caught. Izuku flopped like a fish as he woke with a jolt while lying on his stomach, with the feeling of the air being pushed from him like it had been that day so many years ago. Distantly he knew it was just the memory of the feeling, but that knowledge didn't keep him from savoring the air as he gasped, taking deep breaths to calm his beating heart. That was when he realized the distinct lack of fog coating his brain, but not just that, also the lack of pain. He'd been completely healed. Recovery Girl made a visit considering there were so many heroes hurt in Endeavor's capture. You should still keep off your feet for a few days, and your back too since those got the worst of it. Twisting slightly to view the speaker, he saw Eraserhead sitting calmly in a visitor's chair by his head, yet oddly enough she couldn't heal you completely. Something about already being pretty exhausted. Care to share anything? Not good, he thought vaguely. He was still pretty thrown off from his dream. Not really, it was probably just the stress from the attack. Not all of us are pro-heroes who deal with this daily, you know? I'd say nice try, but for you it really wasn't. Besides, I've seen the video footage of the fight. You were perfectly calm and your one concern was air, which I know wasn't the case this time because some nurses mentioned they had been keeping an eye on her until her father, a tall, polite, white-haired man, came to get her. By the name of Jean. Yes, well, I am an information broker. You know, I can't just give away info like that. My clients will start demanding it too. But they clearly were more thrown off than they thought. The hero sat in silence observing him long enough that he felt oddly uncomfortable and had to twist the urge to fidget or stutter out whatever would make him stop or break eye contact with the intense eyes that stared him down. Finally they spoke again, their tone sounding significantly more concerned than before. Are you sure you're all right, brat? Why, yep, think so. If you say so, just know you've got people here for you. They rose, shuffling their way towards the doorway. They didn't want to disturb your sleep, but you've got some visitors here for you. I'll let them in. Big brother. Eri threw herself into the room and jumped on the foot of the bed as he pulled himself up with some degree of difficulty. Aye. Little listener. So great to see you're alive still. We were worried. Present Mike followed, coming to stand behind her. In the doorway Katsuo saluted, leaning on the frame and pushing Jean in with his free hand. Hiya, boss. About time you woke up. They send their regards by the way and ask if the bi-monthly occurrence will continue as planned. The bi-monthly occurrence was not actually bi-monthly, of course, but was instead the meetup scheduled for every full moon between the normal group. Jean, Katsuo, Kojiesho, Suzy, Ser, and themselves. They were being intentionally cryptic about it, and considering the sheer number of every other month and twice-a-month events, they did an okay job too. Of course it will. Katsuo and Jean grinned. I'll be sure to tell them that. Wahat. What's the bi-monthly occurrence? It sounds super secret? Jin's toothy grin widened as he made his way silently so he was fully into the room and invading present Mick's personal space, though the hero didn't notice yet. Fayets, they sing-songed, gliding away as silently as they had approached when the pro-hero jumped and turned toward them. They kept themselves directly behind the other's back as they continued, because they slid back to stand innocently a few feet away when they turned this time. It absolutely is, of course. You see, Dekairu here is actually a super powerful shadow leader for the whole entire world and dash. No matter how hard you try it won't work. Tanaka. Katsuo cut him off. What? It was believable this time. Do you even know how many countries there are? I don't know. Like 10 maybe? 11? Is that too much? Dear God, Tanaka, how have you managed for so long? It is, isn't it? I knew I should have said 6. There's like over 100. And you say I can't make up believable lies. Deku, help me out here. He's actually right for dash. What do you mean, actually, boss? Actually, there was something like 200 states before the appearance of quirks, although that's changed a bit over the years. Oh come on, don't join him, Deku. Look it up if you don't believe me then. I don't know, you could have hacked the internet or something? Jean eyed him accusingly as he spoke. Hacked the, how on earth would I do that? I've seen you do some pretty crazy things. Katsuo burst into laughter. Tanaka, you're an amazing hacker, how on earth could you believe that possible? I don't know, Ito. You haven't seen the things I have. Deku can do anything. I'm not over-exaggerating here. I'd rather take on all the Yakuza single-handedly at their greatest point than face him angered. You'd take on the Yakuza for fun if the boss was willing to give you a specific bit of information or if he just mentioned in passing that he wanted them gone. You wouldn't? What, no, of course I would, but that's not the point here. Air's laughter interrupted their argument before it could digress any further than it had already and fall into petty name-calling. I swear, you guys will say anything to one-up each other when arguing. Deku took the opportunity their distraction offered, cutting off the new snarky comments that were forming before it could start up again. So cold, boss. Yeah, Deku, just accept our undying loyalty already and take over the world or something. Deku's eyes widened. I have no interest in, I don't know what you mean by that. He glanced off nervously towards where the two pro-heroes stood. All that stuttering makes it seem far more incriminating, brat. Bidbiha, he's right, little listener. Although you end up stuttering so often, it's not actually all that unusual. Blame yourself, boss. I have no clue how you find all these weird people. Jean winked at Deku. Well, where did he find you? What's that supposed to mean? As Izuku leaned on his hand watching the two bicker with the heroes sometimes joining in, Eri at his side, the past and his dream was shoved far from his mind. A faint smile graced his face. It was late at night when he was finally released from the hospital and Jean had already taken Eri off to go to bed. It was times like this he was glad he'd told the other how to enter the building when it was closed. Then again, those times did not outnumber the others when he was far too tempted to just alter it, so the way Jean knew had the greatest chance to activate the defenses, it only took so many times of being woken up at 3 a.m., mere minutes after he'd finally gotten to sleep, to the others soaked in a reddish liquid and the greeting following the lines of, "It's not mine, but quick, you gotta help me with something." Turned out that something hadn't been hiding a corpse, but he was drifting from the point. The point was, he was finally headed home and he and Eri could lay around all day and watch quite frankly horrifying cartoon-like movies. That was the thought that had him hurrying home happily, and that was exactly what he did, taking a few days to kick back, recuperate, and simply enjoy life. It was also the thing that made him receive the news so late, which in turn led him to hurrying to UA, dialing his phone as he sprinted in practically a blind panic. An up-and-coming villain organization was planning an attack on the high school. That news wasn't too worrying. What was worrying, however, was the news of the support of a teleportation quirk, an insider, and the growing rumors of an old underground puppet master villain able to grant wishes in exchange for the person's support, going so far as to give people quirks. To top off the pieces that spelled a perfect disaster was the number of villains, low-lifes and thugs that flocked to the cause and whispers of prison breaks. And he'd missed all of this because he was too busy slacking. He just had to hope it wasn't too late to help. He jammed his finger on the call button. I need to talk to Present Mike now. Tell him it's me, Deku, and it's very, very important. He received no response despite trying 2 separate times. As he waited, bouncing on his feet, he twitched nervously, trying to keep an eye out as if he would be able to tell if the League of Villains attack was already underway. Maybe he would. There were quirks that ended up being pretty showy. Just when he was ready to throw caution to the wind and try just running across and waiting for whoever was on security detail to detain him, Present Mike appeared, out of breath. What's wrong, lit dash? Present Mike. Finally. Where's Class 1A right now? Never mind, it doesn't matter. Get in contact with Eraserhead and call them back to the main building. Or send some heroes to check on them. What are you talking about? There's been whispers of an attack on UA, Class 1A specifically. They have a teleportation quirk user with them, No time to explain, just go. Present Mike nodded, pulling an earpiece out of his pocket and calling out a series of commands. He nodded in satisfaction once done and pulled his phone from his pocket. He spared it a glance before tossing it to Deku and pulling him across by the elbow. Follow me and call Shota, got it, little listener? Right. Deku hurriedly pressed on the number he knew was Eraserhead's. Very few of the favorited contacts used actual names, but Eraserhead's had a fairly telling picture of a black cat sitting next to a mug with a familiar scarf and goggles and a scowl that made you worry for your safety. There was no response. He tried a few more times to similar results before giving up. He's not picking up. Was it supposed to happen today? You should try to save your breath in case it's needed. But I don't actually know. I had taken a few days off, and when I started delving into what I missed, this was the talk of the town. The ones participating had been on standby for one day, but no one knows when it will be. There's talk of an insider though, and of, do you know about well, this has to do with All Might, I think. They're aiming to take him down and they're super confident about it too, so there is something being held back from the masses. They have a secret weapon. Got it, so don't drop my guard. I'd say locate whoever is in charge of the teleportation actually, get him out of the way first since I doubt they'll start with their ace, then it doesn't really matter how good it is. Then the focus should be evacuating the class and containing the villains. Although the worrying thing is there were too many mentions of prison breaks for them not to have an in there. Have there been any escapees lately? I could have missed it since I didn't cover everything yet, but I'm fairly sure there'd be a mention who. They would have to be fairly notorious, and with their goal that would mean. Their muttering began even as they ran panting for breath, so possibly a well-known hero killer, but they'd have to already have a set goal or else they'd be too unpredictable and they'd need someone whose loyalty they could guarantee at least on a temporary basis. Wait here, kid. Present Mike rushed into the building, leaving Deku at the doorway. Deku quickly placed a few hidden monitoring devices that would transmit feed to his laptop before pulling up his hood and sliding on the mask from his pocket and slipping in. The chaos he was greeted with almost made him falter. Almost. Apparently he had been late, but hopefully not too late. He'd made it before anyone had gotten hurt, although the students seemed to be scattered, and so had the two heroes Present Mike has called in to assists. Cementos was off to one side twisting the ground to capture any nearby villains. However, he was struggling with a handful of air and long-ranged based quirks that stayed out of his reach in the air and the trees of a nearby biome. Eraserhead was similarly pestered by long-ranged quirks that stayed out of his sight, as he nullified the quirks of those that succeeded in avoiding the others clawing cement. A few steps behind them was the other hero who had answered Present Mike's call for backup. Fighting in sync with the literature and homeroom teachers was Snipe, picking off the long-ranged villains as best he could, although he was hindered by portals that randomly appeared, turning his well-aimed shots into friendly fire. The three weren't nearly enough to deal with the force they had been greeted with, of course, but it was a start. Present Mike had quickly joined them, screaming down, as in up until they were crushed by the roof, and then down, some of the attackers that soared through the air. Determined, Deku ran a keen eye across the battlefield, his eyes landing on what seemed to be the ones behind the attack, puppet leaders. He was sure of that now, but still the primary guiding force present. With that confirmed, he pulled a face mask up to cover the lower part of his face where his mask didn't cover, and began cutting his way across the battlefield. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice ironically laughed at how productive this training session would be for the potential heroes. Further back, he wondered if he would run into Bakugo while here, if the other would recognize him. He didn't know why, but he couldn't bring himself to call the other Kachin anymore, not even in his head. He hadn't tried saying it aloud. As he came up to the gray-haired handyman and the suit-wearing human void, he should feel bad for those comments, shouldn't he? They turned their focus to him. Beside them, an odd creature with a beak loomed, brains showing. Was this the Nomu he'd been hearing so often? Were they the secret weapon? Did that mean they should leave the teleportation user alone so they could retreat and take the muscular, bird-like man with them? What's this? One of the background characters wants to face one of the last bosses. That's fine by me. Shimura Tenko, Tamura now, right? The one with blue-gray hair dropped the carefree attitude, anger flowing in their red eyes. And what would you know, I saw you slip in after the fight with Present Mike. Deku waved their hand lazily despite the terror building in their gut. This would be the first time they tried something like this. That's not all that important. I didn't mean to offend though. Not yet anyway. I have an old friend who always said it was rude to attack without properly acknowledging someone first, although I'm pretty sure they got that device from a fictional villain and twisted it a bit. I mean they used murder too, but I'm rambling, aren't I? You may call me Canary. I'd like to have the honor of fighting you. Canary, huh? Like the canary in the coal mines. Well, you'll do I suppose. Try not to be too boring. Deku chuckled nervously. I'll be sure to die. They hurriedly dodges as the other lunged, quickly moving to the side as they observed their attacker's form, reaction time, style, recovery time, and looked for old injuries. New ones too really. He wasn't going to be picky and look a gift horse in the mouth. With a snarl, Shigaraki pivoted, sliding to place himself at Deku's open back, but Deku was prepared for that, dropping down and sweeping his leg out as he turned to face them again. One hand pulled a taser as they went, the other at the ready for any counterattacks. It was unnecessary as Shigaraki leapt back a few steps. You're not so bad a fighter, Canary. What brings you here? Curiosity mostly. I've been hearing about this for a few days. It seemed like it would be big. They trailed off and then ducked, throwing one of the mutant-type quirk users over his shoulder to land roughly in between him and Shigaraki. He is mine. Do you really think I couldn't beat him? Shigaraki growled, barely giving the villain. Deku had just flipped a chance to stammer a defense before the new attacker was up in ashes. Why do the useless cannon fodder always insist on interfering? Shigaraki, we do need them right now, Kurogyri placated. I know that, but they're just so annoying. Now then, knowing there was no situation where he came out in a good place, the nameless villain took the chance to scamper off. They lunged again. This time Deku caught one hand and safely deflected the other. The quirk seemed to require him to hold an object, so he needed to keep an eye on his hands. He pulled the other forward, bringing a knee to slam into his chest before twisting an arm and sidestepping to avoid the other one. He nearly tripped up when one leg shot out from the forced crouch, but he was able to easily recover at the cost of having to back off for a moment. Shigaraki stood up with a grin. It seemed the villain had taken a liking to him, almost seeing him as interesting and useful, while still something he could ultimately look down upon easily enough. The two lunged together this time, Deku blocking a feigned blow, allowing Shigaraki to slip beneath his guard. He kicked out at the knees, connecting, but at the cost of his now extended and open leg's knee. Based off the cringeworthy snap that sounded when his foot connected though, it was almost worth it. Both crashed to the ground, eyeing the other. You're getting to be really annoying, Canary. Well, I did say I would try not to be boring, so wouldn't it be fairer to say I kept my word rather than I'm annoying? He received only a glare in response, and then they lunged using their good leg. Deku ducked down instead of meeting him this time, pressing both hands on the other's middle and using his whole body to heave him up towards his companion, the teleportation quirk user. He immediately ducked into a roll as another villain attacked him from behind, leaving a cracked mark from where the incoming fist had connected with the ground. In hindsight, that wasn't such a good idea, but he really didn't expect the Void user to be able to keep such a close eye on their fight with how many attacks he was blocking the so-called cannon fodder, because some really had quite the reputations themselves. Shigaraki came shooting out from a portal behind him, knocking him firmly to the ground, and it was only his precaution of double hoodies that saved him. The upper one had crumbled to dust by the time he twisted around, getting his good leg up in time to shove him in the gut, using the opposite hand to shove his shoulder in the same direction and the remaining hand to pull his arm, redirecting it from his midsection. Just as he began pushing himself up, a loud clang resonated throughout the entire building, a matching splashy thunk signifying that yes, the entryway doors had in fact been blown off their hinges. Deku eyed Shigaraki, who was scratching his neck as he did the same. Deku knew his back was open to the new threat, but also had to worry if the villain was given the chance to get behind his back again. He was already down a jacket and a knee. The fight wasn't going as well as possible. Deku could really only comfort himself knowing that at least he kept them from freeing their helpers from the cement or joining in the fight. Because Deku knew despite his petulant attitude there was a certain cleverness behind it. It just wasn't often used, and he could understand that. At times he wished he could shut his own brain off and not wonder about intentions and personalities, and the trillion of other things that swirled about his head nearly driving him to tears if not insanity. He absently began muttering, "Don't worry, for I am here." The booming proclamation decided it for the two, both tearing their eyes away to stare at the number one hero in tandem. Deku tensed as the hero ignored his co-workers and shot towards them in one powerful bound. In a twist of what to Deku seemed to be irony at its highest, however, the pillar of peace, justice, and all that is good twisted direction slightly as he shot to them, and just like that Deku realized, barely too late to do anything, that the pro-hero wasn't aiming for Shigaraki. They were the target. He went to raise his arms in defense, but was clearly going to be too slow. Why was he even trying to block? He should have. The world darkened around him, flinging him once more into a pain-filled but all the same empty abyss.